Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 136 in the book of Genesis. We're going to talk about so you want to be a leader. We're going to look at the principles of good leadership. And we're going to do that through a guy named Jacob, who's now identified by the name Israel, who's going to turn into a nation of Israel. He's only 16 descendants at the nation of Israel only had 16 people in it at this moment in time. So up to this point, he's put all his valuables and anything that might appease his murderous brother in front of him. And then he has this encounter where he wrestles with God and strives with God and won't let go of God till God blesses him, and he changes. And we're going to look at some of the principles about leadership because of what he did. So here, in that process, good leadership is done with prayer. It's done with kind of desperation and desperate prayer. He's dislocated, literally. He gets his hip dislocated during the wrestling with God. And good leadership is done with good dislocation. So what do you do with your dislocation from the Lord? We'll talk about that in a minute. But you limp on, you limp forward. So ever since then, he walks with this limp. He's changed by this encounter with God. So good leadership is also done with wrestling and striving, and good leadership is done with this God who is kind to him and wrestles back in a nice way. So today, now Genesis chapter 33 and verse number 1. Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau, his brother, is coming with 400 men with him. So he doesn't know, he thinks this is going to turn out badly. So he divides his children among Leah, Rachel, the two female servants, and he puts the servants and their children in front, and Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. Then this is the big part about this, positionally, Jacob goes in front of them, goes before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. So good leadership here, we find that good leadership through Jacob is done with personal risk, personal peril. He risks himself by putting himself in front of all these people and children. And here, good leadership is done with humility. He puts himself and puts humility before his brother, does it 7 times. So ironically, to step up, he bows down. To step up, he steps down. He leads by bowing. He leads by leaning into the promises of God. He leads by leaning into the contact with God, even if that puts you out of joint. And he shows how real contact with God. So how can contact with God, a real contact with God, who's really holy, be anything but dislocating, because we're not very holy. So he leads by courage, he leads by initiation, and he leads when at peril. So if you want to be a leader, think about this. You're going to be leading when in peril. In fact, he puts himself in the primary position of peril, and then he finally leads by bowing down. Now, the outcome of the story, careful here as you read the story, is when this happened, nobody knew how this was going to turn out. Not Jacob, not Rachel, not Leah, not the other wives, not the 11 children. They were scared to death. So here we go, verse 4, and this is where we stopped yesterday. But Esau ran to meet him and ... Does he kill him? Does he kill the fatted calf? What happens here? But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him and wept. What a story. So this humility, this risking, this all wins. Humility wins the day here. Verse 5. And when Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Now, the reason he said that is Jacob's been gone for 20 years. So he hasn't met any of the 11 children. He has not met the 4 wives. He's never met these relatives. So Jacob says, the children whom God has graciously given your servant, given me, Jacob. Then the servants drew near, these other wives, and they and their children and bowed down. And Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down, which included the eldest, Judah. And Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. And Esau says, verse 8, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. But Jacob said, no, please. If I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. Thus he urged him, and he took it. So if you want to be a leader, here it is. Be in contact with God. Wrestle with him. Strive. Fight with him a little bit. And be in prayer, which is the wrestling. And it's just verbalizing it, talking it, working it through. Be ready to be undone. Be ready to be dislocated. Be ready to be limped, if you will. And then be ready to walk with a limp. So have you ever met anybody who had some injury, a difficulty, a grief, a betrayal, a death, something, and then they never moved on for a day in their life? They were stuck in that exact day. That's not leadership. Here's what leadership is. Leadership is walking with the limp. Leadership is even leading with a limp. So it's part of life is embracing the limps. I'm not denying the hurts. I'm not ignoring them. I'm not saying work through them and get forgiveness, but it's not a stationary activity. So if you want to lead, be ready to put yourself in the primary position of peril. And then finally, to be humble. 7 times Jacob bows. And servanthood or leadership is servanthood. And Jesus is going to show that in the New Testament. So in closing, I want this to ring in your heads today and in my head today. Lead by bowing down. 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 Thanks for listening.